right, hello wine drinking people. Time for more of what I've had to drink. Yesterday, our good friend Francesco Mazzei was just in from Castello di Fontarutoli and Belgardo, and all these guys have got properties all over Italy now. I'll tell you what, this is a family that goes back to 1435, their roots in Tuscany, and they've got, well, members of the family that have purchase orders for the very first Chianti ever produced, or, well, they called it Chianti anyways, that's Sir Lapo. They've honored that tradition, that family tradition, and then they've just brought in a new wine, this Philip, and we're one of the first people to showcase this wine to you, our wine-drinking people, here in South Florida. And the Castello di Fontarutoli Chianti, one of the benchmarks by which all other Chiantis are judged. And this is a property that hangs its hat on the different types of Sangiovese that they've got on the property. They say they have 36 different types, and they've done a lot of research into the 18 different clones they have. And then Sangiovese is very similar to Pinot Noir in that it mutates. And, you know, it kind of changes to adapt to the terrain that it's in this property that they have there. It's got different altitudes and aspects. So they've got 18 different biotypes of those 18 different clones. So you have 36 different types of Sangiovese on the property, thus the new wine mix 36, which we've also unveiled here, the very first vintage. So some fun stuff here on the table. It's always great to have Francesco in. He tells great stories, as you can imagine. This is, you know, Tuscan royalty. His family goes back for generations, and these guys are very serious about, you know, maintaining the property. They're stewards of the land, and these guys don't want to sell out to some big corporation, some Chinese people that want to come and get in the Italian wine business. This is their land. This has been in their family for generations, and he loves doing what he's doing. He was off on a plane the next morning to go to China and Japan, a whirlwind tour promoting the family properties. And like I said, they've added the Belgardo property, which is in the Maremma area, which kind of an interesting story. He went there because, well, what do you do when you're young? You know, you chase women around, and he fell in love with the girl from the Maremma. And then his brother fell in love with the girl from Sicily. So the next thing you know, they're down in Sicily, and Zizola Winery, their newest venture here in Sicily. And hey, I'm from Sicily. What a beautiful place. And the women down there also beautiful. So women drove them to both of these new areas where they've developed wineries. All right, well, the first wine, the Sir Lapo, which pays tribute to the first purchase order ever for Chianti from a producer in Tuscany, which the Mazzei family lays claim to this title as well. And this is a really forward and easy drinking style of Chianti, the 2009 vintage. Also a little warmer year, so this is lovely red berry fruit here, really silky smooth on the tongue, and really nice balance in this wine, though, and has some nice sage and kind of herb characters that you get from Chianti, but a real nice, easy drinking wine. And the 2009 vintage also helps. The 2011 Fontarutoli Chianti Classico, the black label, and sometimes these wines are a little hard to differentiate, but the label color will help you, because the only difference between that and the yellow label, which is their estate, their top wine from the estate, is the color of the label a lot of times when you look at the nomenclature, but it does say Castello di Fontarutoli on the yellow label. That's how it should be labeled anyways. And the 2011, a cooler vintage, and, you know, it's the same vineyards that they draw from for their Castello di Fontarutoli, and, you know, it's a different part of the estate, though. It's a rather large estate, and they do have a rather dense planting there, 5,000 acres per vine, vines per hectare, and a variety of soils and altitudes. So this adds complexity to the wines. They're a lovely, zesty, red berry fruit. And this wine's got some tannins to it still. It's a little bit young, and maybe that's why the crowd liked the Sir Lapo a little better. It's still a little bit aggressive. But, you know, like I said, a cooler vintage. So you notice that cooler vintage with the finish on this wine as well. Nice acidity. Castello di Fontarutoli 06. This is a great vintage. This is a flagship of the property. Over 100, there are 120 different parcels, and each one of them is vinified separately here. And then they blend these, you know, to make the various wines. Well, the three wines here that are mentioned above. And this one's got wonderful richness to it. It's 10% Cabernet Sauvignon, 90% Sangiovese, and a lot of everything here. A lot of fresh earth, out of that black truffle note you get, the mushroomy note you get from Chianti Classico, and really good structure. These 2006s have got some legs. They're going to be around for a while. This one's got a big finish and most excellent juice. Killer vintage for Castello Fontarulli if you want to have your Chianti in your cellar for 45 years. I just had a 69 Chianti from Selva the other day, yesterday, along with these wines. It was fantastic still, so you can age Chianti, but only the best, like this Castello Fontarulli. All right, the Belgaro Serrata was up next. This one had a very pretty bouquet, 2010. Still a lot of freshness here, kind of a fresh ground beef aroma. Some light earthy notes there, red berry fruit, and really nice, easy drinking style wine from the Maremma. And lighter, but this is not a wine you want to age. It's one you just pop the cork and drink. Tonight, the Zazzola from Sicily, their entry-level wine from this property, really soft and easy drinking style of Nero di Avola, and light red berry fruit, really lovely silky tannins, and you notice those calcareous soils there as well. You get the minerality out of this wine, really light and refreshing style of Nero di Avola, very good juice. And then the Dopo Zeta, which pays tribute to the two Z's in the family name here. This 2007 vintage. Starting to show nicely, but got a lot of structure here. It's got a little Syrah and Cabernet Franc in with the indigenous Nero di Avola, and really lovely richness to this wine. Very different than the entry-level wine from this Zazzola property, and a lot of structure, a lot of dark and red berry fruit here, and some nice kind of wildflower and herb note on the finish here. This wine, most excellent juice, the 2007 Doppio Zeta. All right, the Fontarulli Siepi up next. This is one of the iconic Super Tuscans of the Chianti region, and this wine is 50% Merlot, 50% Sangiovese, and what incredible structure these 2006s have. Let me tell you, this is a vintage that you want to hold on in your cellar for another 10 years. We've had the 2002 vintage of this wine, which is not even a good vintage, but the wine drinks so beautifully today that if you had it in a lineup with vintages like 06, you might say, man, I like this 2002 better. This is a wine that needs time. It's got a lot of everything, and in proportion, this 2006 most excellent juice. And I asked Francesco, why don't you make a $300 to $500 wine like Antinori's do with their Solaya? And, I guess it's not that important to these guys. They make wine to be drank. He doesn't want the wine to be set aside and put up on a trophy cage to say, I have this at $100. You're still drinking these wines. You're not putting them aside, or reselling them at a later date. Great value, if you can say that, for a $100 wine. A wine you could keep for 10, 20 years or more. The Mix 36, this is their new wine. This wine tells the story about the Mazzei family, what they've been working for the last 500 years. Like I mentioned, the 18 clones and 18 different biotypes, all in this wine, and it has got wonderful intensity here. There's an array of spice and kind of incense notes here with a lovely, rich red berry fruit, and like I said, just wonderful richness on the palate, concentration. This wine needs some time. The 2008 vintage, a little cooler vintage, so a very classic structure. They only made 9 barrels. These are tonneaus, so rather large barrels, just under 1,000 cases of this wine. The first vintage, most excellent juice, and under $100 again. What a great value. All right, Tenuta Belgardo, the top wine from Maremma 2005. This wine's showing really nice. This is a blend of Cabernet Franc and Cabernet Sauvignon, 10% Cabernet Franc. And this wine has a lovely, pretty floral note to it that you get from that Cabernet Franc. And 2005, if it wasn't in between 04 and 06, would have gotten a lot more attention, because 04 and 06 are great vintages. 05 is very good whenever you put the wines on the table. Very balanced. And wine vintage, I think, is going to last very well in your cellar also, but one that you can open up and drink tonight. Really smooth, ripe tannins in these 2005s, but an excellent bottle. And then the Philip. This is the wine that pays tribute to the family member that was good friends with our founding fathers, Jefferson, Washington, and he was actually brought over to the Monticello property to plant grapevines there in Virginia. Unfortunately, they didn't live, but still, he was also credited with giving Jefferson the idea that, all men were created equal. This time in Tuscany, they were very progressive thinking people, very liberal, and Jefferson credits this member of the Mazzei family with inspiring him to write this, add this into our Constitution. So they have a special relationship with us. This wine is a blend of Cabernet from their property at Fontarutoli and their property at Belgardo. So 100% Cabernet from those two properties. And wow, this wine has got lovely complexity to it. This 2009, some rich, ripe cassis and currant berry fruits, and has some nice earth characters to it too. You mix those two different dirt together, and it's amazing the complexity that you come up with. That some dark cocoa spice, some black truffle notes, really lovely complexity, tobacco, and a long finish. Only 1,000 cases of this produced for $50. All right, the label does look a little cartoonish, but other than that, I think you've got a wine here that's going to last 10, 20 years easily in your cellar. Cabernet Sauvignon from Tuscany and from the Maremma Coast. That's what we had to drink with Francesco Mazzei. I'm your host, Andrew Lamposoni, signing off for the Wine Watch, saying remember, always drink the good stuff first.